South Africa has recorded a sharp increase in coronavirus infections. Cases have doubled since Monday. Health officials say it might be being fueled by the Omicron variant. Beijing says the Women's Tennis Association is politicizing sport after its decision to suspend all tournaments in China over concerns about tennis star Peng Shuai. She has accused a top official of sexual assault. The American actor Alec Baldwin has given his first full interview since the fatal shooting of the cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of his film Rust. Mr. Baldwin said he did not pull the trigger on the gun. The Court of Appeal will give its ruling today on the latest stage of a legal privacy battle between the Duchess of Sussex and the publisher of the Mail on Sunday over a letter to her estranged father.
We begin with Japan's efforts to halt the spread of the Omicron coronavirus variant. The country is rolling back a travel restriction that would have left some citizens stranded abroad. The government reversed the decision to ban new bookings for flights into Japan for the rest of the year. The Transport Ministry had asked airlines to cooperate. Existing reservations would not have been cancelled, but new bookings would have been virtually impossible even for Japanese citizens. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio admitted on Thursday the ban on new bookings had caused confusion.
I instructed the Transport Ministry to fully consider the demand from Japanese people for a way to return home.
The government made no mention about foreign residents. But the situation is taking its toll on major events. The International Skating Union says it's canceling a Grand Prix final for figure skating next week in the western prefecture of Osaka. On the vaccine front, Japan started giving booster shots to medical workers on Wednesday. In principle, people have to wait at least 8 months after their second dose. But the government's chief spokesperson says that's not set in stone.
The government will further consider which people do not have to wait 8 months. Factors include the supply of doses, any changes in the infection situation, and the preparedness of local governments.
Now, Japan has the pandemic under relative control. New cases remain low. Authorities across the nation reported 127 on Thursday. Tokyo confirmed 11 of them. The current number of confirmed Omicron cases in Japan is 2. Now, research institutes around the world are analyzing Omicron symptoms and the effectiveness of vaccines. The European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control said all 44 people it confirmed as having Omicron in the EU on Tuesday had mild symptoms or none. A senior health official in Botswana told Reuters 16 out of 19 people with Omicron had very mild symptoms or none. A Japanese expert says there's still no clear data on the new variant's characteristics.
The number of serious cases increases once infections spread to a certain extent, so we must not drop our guard. We must keep collecting data, make sure we understand the situation, and make decisions based on the results of experiments.
All international air travelers arriving in the United States will now be required to get tested for the coronavirus within 1 day before departure, rather than the current 3 days. The tighter protocol is part of new measures announced on Thursday. They include a campaign to encourage adults to get booster shots. It'll be conducted through multiple channels, including email and smartphone messaging. The government also plans to expand access to free at-home virus tests. The announcement comes 1 day after the U.S. confirmed its first case of the Omicron variant in California in a traveler who had returned from South Africa. U.S. officials say they'll step up anti-infection efforts while carefully watching how effective existing vaccines are against the variant and whether it causes severe symptoms. Well, many countries have tightened border controls for travelers from southern parts of Africa, but those restrictions have drawn criticism from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
With a virus that is truly borderless, travel restrictions that isolate any one country or region are not only deeply unfair and punitive, they are ineffective.
Guterres urged the international community to consider more effective measures such as repeated testing.
Let's use those instruments to avoid this kind of, allow me to say, travel apartheid. Which I think is unacceptable.
He warned regions with low vaccination rates could become breeding grounds for variants. Guterres called for a quicker supply of vaccines to developing countries. The Women's Tennis Association has announced it's suspending all of its tournaments in China. The unprecedented decision comes in response to concerns about the safety of Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai. The 35-year-old athlete has not been seen in public since she made allegations of sexual assault against a former senior government official. WTA Chairman Steve Simon says the leadership in China has not addressed what he calls this very serious issue in any credible way. He says he has serious doubts Peng is free, safe, and not subject to censorship, coercion, and intimidation. Simon says unless Beijing follows through with the necessary steps, the association cannot put its players nor staff at risk by holding events in China, including Hong Kong. The games are worth tens of millions of dollars. Peng disappeared from public view after posting a message on social media saying she'd been coerced into a sexual relationship by former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli. A number of tennis greats have expressed their support for Peng. They include Martina Navratilova, who says the association has taken a brave stance by putting principle above money and standing up for women. China has reacted sharply to the announcement.
We strongly oppose any attempts to politicize sports.
Hours after the WTA's decision, the International Olympic Committee issued a statement saying it had held a second video call with Peng. The IOC says it's addressing the issue directly because she's a three-time Olympian, but it has not yet released any photos or footage of the conversation. Still, the issue could affect the Beijing Winter Olympics in February. U.S. President Joe Biden has said his administration is considering not sending any government officials to the event over the human rights situation in China. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen says he's going to invite an official from Myanmar's military to his country next week. Wuna Muang Ling was appointed as Myanmar's foreign minister after the coup in February. Cambodia's state-run media quoted the prime minister making the remark on Thursday and said he's also prepared to visit Myanmar. The decision comes just before Cambodia assumes the rotating chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations next year.
The most important point of ASEAN is a consensus in its decision-making process. They should be made by 10 countries, not 9.
ASEAN members have refused to allow Myanmar's junta leader to attend its summits amid the military's continuing violence against civilians. Hun Sen apparently hopes stepping up efforts to engage with Myanmar's leadership will help break the impasse within ASEAN and restore normalcy. In other news, the defense chiefs of the United States and South Korea have agreed to update and strengthen their military capabilities to counter threats from China and North Korea. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Seoul. He and his counterpart, So Wook, held annual security talks with North Korea high on their agenda.
We also reaffirmed our shared assessment that the DPRK is continuing to advance its missile and weapons programs, which is increasingly destabilizing for regional security.
Austin said the U.S. and South Korea remain committed to a diplomatic approach to the North and will keep urging it to engage in dialogue. Their joint communique says the U.S. reiterated its firm commitment to providing extended deterrence to South Korea using the full range of American capabilities, including nuclear and missile defense. Seoul said Seoul and Washington will pursue the shared goal of completely denuclearizing the Korean peninsula and bringing permanent peace. They also touched on China's military buildup.
We know that China conducted a test of a hypersonic weapon on the 27th of July. It just underscores why we consider the PRC to be our pacing challenge.
Lloyd added China's pursuit of those capabilities increases tensions in the region. He and So said their trilateral security cooperation with Japan remains critical to regional stability, and they committed to enhancing ties, including information sharing. The U.S. military has provided more information on why one of its F-16 fighter jets dumped 2 fuel tanks over northern Japan earlier this week. Officials say the pilot took the action because the jet's engine oil pressure had dropped. The plane took off Tuesday from the U.S. Misawa Air Base in Aomori Prefecture on a training flight, but it was later forced to make an emergency landing. The U.S. military told officials from Misawa City the pilot decided he had to reduce the aircraft's weight to keep it in the air, and he followed the proper procedures for unloading the tanks. In such situations, pilots are required to ensure they're flying over water or a non-residential area. But debris from both tanks were recovered near a town. The U.S. military says it's set up a committee to look into the accident. Next in weather, heavy rain has led to significant floods over eastern Australia, forcing hundreds of people to evacuate. Our meteorologist John Thono explains the situation for there and elsewhere in our World Weather Report.
Hello. Areas in the southern portion of Queensland have calmed down just a bit after a really wet day on Wednesday. Here's a look at some video coming out of the region. As severe flooding has been reported in southern Queensland Wednesday, coming after heavy rain hitting the area that caused some rivers to break their banks. Almost 800 people in Inglewood had to be evacuated from their homes, and authorities say some regions saw more than 100 millimeters of rain in a 24-hour period. We are looking at mainly dry weather for places like Brisbane and the Gold Coast as we go through Friday up toward the northern areas of Queensland, like Cairns. You may be talking about some rain and even some thunderstorms with a high of 33. Plenty of heat back to the north and west. Port Hedland 42 at 42, Alice Springs at 39 degrees as we wrap up the work week. Slightly farther to the north, we are keeping an eye out on Nyato as it continues to move toward the Ogasawara Islands and is already having impacts in the area. It will continue to move in that general direction, bringing some very heavy rainfall, strong winds, high waves, all those things, a big part of the forecast, so be on the lookout for that. Now, we are looking at a system north and west of Japan that's going to bring some snow into Hokkaido, areas toward the south and east, looking at highs into the teens. I'm going to step out for a second. Look at this beautiful picture as we have autumn really starting to come over the area here. So, yeah, pretty colors coming into the picture. 17 in Tokyo on Friday, 16 on Saturday, 13 on Sunday. Showers into Fukuoka with a high of 15 coming up on Friday. Quick note on Europe, we do have a system moving through the central areas of the continent with another system moving to the north and west and coming from there down to the south and east. So we are talking about this pattern of seeing precipitation from time to time as we head toward the weekend. That's the forecast. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.